we're gonna hit it now. And yeah, these reports will pull up just like any other report. It's all great. The key setting is, if we see under the premium heading here, I went to workspace settings and premium. Choose an available premium capacity for this workspace. Now, unless you, the user, sign up for a trial, you don't really see this option. But you can still sign up for a trial right now, this week through April 2nd. And basically, I think it would give you like 60 days for free, or you still get a 60-day free trial. So if your company wants to try it out, it's a great, nice time window to try that out. Yeah, you have to turn this on. And so I don't have any dedicated capacities running right now that I could assign this to, but hey, premium per user, that's cool. That'll work great. And yeah, that's it. Once you turn it on, it gives you that icon and it's all, there you are. This is now running premium capacity. I can publish, I haven't done it yet, I could publish SSRS reports out here. I can do XMLA write back. I can do all that stuff. I've got deployment pipelines actually already set up because I wanted to see that feature for myself. Okay, so let me, with that said, well, let me pause there. Any questions so far? We're going to get to some FAQ slides next, but go ahead and hit me up if you have any. Oh, I see a chat here. Misty. Okay, yeah, if you publish from premium, non-premium users can't access the report. Yep, Misty, you're right. You're right on. And I was going to show that, demonstrate that with a second user. Yeah, let's get into that a little bit. That was the next thing. Okay, sharing content, who can see what? So this is exactly what you're saying, Misty. It says, okay, we're used to Pro. This is our familiar friends, Pro and Premium per capacity. Now they're kind of changing the name Premium to Premium per capacity. Wonderful marketing. Yeah, with Pro, I could share with other Pro users. I could not share with non-named users who did not have a Pro license. With Premium per capacity, I could share with Pro users and Premium per capacity users. So the matrix went from 4 options, now it goes up to 9 options, as you can see, a little more complicated. If I'm a Premium per user and I have published something into a workspace running on Premium per user capacity, unfortunately, people who are just running a Pro license can't access that. I'm going to demo that in just a moment. People who are running Premium per user can, yay. But then folks who are unnamed still cannot, can't access it. So what it looks like from a different user's point of view. So here I am signed in as a different user who has a Power BI Pro license. Actually, you can see here there's a little trial. This is how you start the trial, which is a good thing to demonstrate. If you're in Power BI, you can start by clicking on your user icon and click Pro account. I'm laughing because Misty put in the chat, boo. I'm thinking about Princess Bride when you do that, Misty. That's funny. But yeah, boo indeed. Yeah, okay, we'll get to that. Pro account, so you can, yeah. But it's interesting because I went ahead as my PPU user, I went ahead and granted access to the workspace. I was like, well, why not? Here, I'll make this guy a member of the workspace. That ought to work. And so when I signed in as that user, sure enough, oh wow, I see this Premium per user workspace. It's got, I'm like, this is going to be great. We're going to save so much money doing this. But look what happens when I click on the report. Whoops. To use this feature, upgrade to a PPU license. Basically, it's what the matrix is saying. And then there are some interesting questions on the FAQ, like, well, what if I made a report off of this data set and I put that report in a workspace on shared capacity where Pro users can see it, they'll still figure that out and give them this message and say, no, this data set's running on Premium per user, so you got to get a Premium per user license. That's how it's working right now, anyway. It's definitely confusing, but if you are the kind of organization who let's say you have like 6 Pro users, but you want some of those premium features, this could be awesome. Yeah, doubling your cost to $120 per month from 60, maybe not that big of a deal, and you get all the premium features. That could be great. Yeah, what about embedded from PPU? Now that Tyler, I haven't looked into that a lot. That's a great question. But based on this matrix, I would guess that it would not work because that's essentially, embedded is basically the same thing as premium per capacity. Yeah, it's pretty much everyone who gets in there has got to also have premium per user. So I had a question with that about subscriptions. So because if I can publish a paginated report and subscribe and blast that out, how does that work? So that kind of came up here. Well, it's this question here. Essentially, this actually can work. If you want to have one person with a PPU license who publishes SSRS reports and then blasts out subscriptions to everybody, they basically say you can, as long as they have a PPU or Pro, and if the content is the same for all the recipients. So if you're doing kind of like the data-driven subscription or row-level security or things like that, it doesn't work that way. But if it's, basically here's the report, same for everybody, you can do that. So that may be a plus. Maybe that's a way that not everyone needs PPU per se. So let's see. Okay, let's just go through them one by one. Do I need to buy Pro and Premium per user? No, that's good. Just either 10 or 20 bucks a month. Okay, what does Premium capacity, or what they now call Premium per capacity, give me? The Premium per user doesn't. It can run on multi-geo support. Okay, fine. But here's the big one. Premium per capacity gives you unlimited distribution. Without named users, PPU does not. So it also does not give you the Power BI report server license, the on-premise product, and also bring your own key, which for most of you, that's going to be like, what? That doesn't matter. Yeah. Everyone who interacts with content in PPU must also have PPU. Bummer. Yeah. So those are some pretty common FAQs on PPU. I can't think. I should have done a SSRS demo for you, but I didn't quite get around to that. So this is the key thing to know. And I know some of your organizations are probably also right in the middle. It's like, it's cheaper for us to do Pro. Should we do Premium? Maybe the mid-sizes get a little caught in between. What point should we just go for Premium per capacity? And it's a little analysis to figure out what the best option there is. Let me just pause for any more questions, and while I pause, Anna, I'm going to make you a co-host so you can be ready to present.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Ooh, Tyler, that's a great question about how does the Python integration work with Premium versus Pro. I don't know of any differences. And I'll have to research that and get back with you. That's a good question. Python. Tyler, would you mind clarifying that a little bit? Like it.
Yeah. Can you hear me, Brent?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So one of the things I was looking at was the differences in integration. So with if you're using Python to say pull data into Power BI, with the Pro version, you have to have Python installed on your local machine. And then if you are with the Premium, from what I was sort of reading, is that instead of having to install on your local machine, you can actually use Python because they have it hosted on the server. So that way there's a set of libraries that are pre-installed. So like, scikit-learn, pandas, numpy, etc. So that way you could write Python code to do, certain data manipulations or visualizations without having to have Python hosted on each local machine.
I've never looked into that before. I should have, but I see what you mean now. I see some of the announcements about where are the runtimes. So you kind of have like a personal gateway if you're doing Pro, so that, yeah, because in that shared capacity, they don't have a Python runtime in there. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll try to find that out about Premium per user. That's a great question. I hope they would.
Yeah, me too. Thanks.
Okay, yeah. So with that, it's thank you guys for those questions. I saw there was a lot of questions and feedback there in the chat. I really appreciate that. Well, it's my pleasure to introduce to you Ana Guarizo. from Blueprint Technology. And so Anna is a business intelligence engineer, and she has done some neat work, which you're already seeing a little preview here in the screen share, about doing lineage for measures. Yeah, and she has a lot of experience with premium capacities and deployment pipelines, and also was very kind to kind of step in when Zoe got pulled away at the last moment. So really appreciate that, Anna. And just so you know what we're seeing a screen that has the slide and the next slide, which I think is fine. If that's, it's kind of hard with PowerPoint to know which one you're sharing. So we're kind of seeing the presenter view, and that looks okay to me, but.
Let me see.
Yeah.
I have two screens, so.
Yeah, Zoom and this don't always get along as well as.
Okay,
Oh yeah, and she's I guess going to talk about the pipelines too, which is great. Deployment pipelines. So Tony, you mind if I ask Tony, if you have a chance to chime in, why would you say that deployment pipelines alone are worth the cost of premium? If you're still there, I know you're not shy to talk.
No, I'm here.
Good.
So wait, what do you want to know about deployment pipeline?
Yeah, just what is it about them that makes it so valuable to you guys in particular? You said that's kind of worth the price of admission.
Know, yeah, so I know that we work very closely with Blueprint on a lot of our deployments, and whenever they're doing some type of development with development data as well in certain dashboards, it's nice that whenever they publish that to we have a development workspace.
Mm-hmm.
Well, how about this? From a very basic level, whenever you create a premium workspace, which then allows you to have the deployment pipeline as an option, it will auto create test and production. Great, you just knocked off like 10 minutes of my time. And so we are structuring in a way at our company to kind of treat every workspace, or I'm sorry, every deployment pipeline in the sense of that report in terms of either a data source or just maybe even a certain team that needs to understand that, hey, when we deploy this to development, we can assign certain users to there. And as we promote it through the pipeline, we have set it up our Power BI projects in a way that they will automatically connect to our test environment for source data. And then once that is kind of tested out, we then promote it to our production workspace, which then connects to our production environment data source. And then of course, after that, highly recommend creating an app for it, so they're not always having to reshare the link in the production workspace. So you kind of have this great flexibility that's more or less automated and allows you to promote these things through from an IT project management perspective that's controlled in terms of your user groups and your sources of data before it becomes active in the app, which everybody else is using.
Okay, very
So
cool.
It's a great process. And when Anna and I were working with Zoe on kind of setting that up initially back in January, I want to say, it was a little bit of a learning curve for all of us. But now that it's done, it's easily replicated and done. It is going to be done with a lot more reports. So
very nice. Okay, very cool. Well,
Anna, and now you're not having to worry about several different people with their hands on different versions of the file. And
this is version 13 or Very cool. All right. Well, Anna,
I don't want to take away from Anna.
Yeah, we'll let you take it away. Yeah.
I'll let her.
That's awesome.
Thank you. So Tony, thank you. It's a great summary of what I will be presenting today. I don't have access to the pipeline, and we'll talk about that later in the presentation, the reason why. But the agenda would be the pipeline, and also at the end, if you have time, I will just show some measure lineage. That's another thing that we can do also, because that's Power BI premium capacity. So that's one extra thing you can do because we have premium here. So as Tony mentioned, the great thing about using the pipeline is that reduces a lot of the manual work that you have to do. And also you create that for the first time. it's reusable. So it's much easier to deploy and save us a lot of time, and it's easy to maintain and use it as well. So it's pretty simple for our clients to learn and maintain that after we set up everything. And the one thing that you have to do here also that I will show is to set up all the data set rules and the parameters, so you can actually change the source on your data here through the pipeline. You don't need to go manually change in the desktop version and republished. So it's pretty simple. You only see this deployment pipeline option if you actually, looks like if you have premium capacity. I checked with my Blueprint account and I don't have premium there, so I cannot see that. So you see here that it's written deployment pipeline, and it's pretty simple. You click the button create pipeline and it start walking you through the whole process. So the deployment pipeline, there is actually two ways that you can do it. If you already have a production workspace, you can start from this production workspace and then deploy backwards for the first time. So from the production workspace, you create deploy to an empty stage, which will be your test stage. And then from the test stage, you'll duplicate and create your dev workspace for you. So as Tony mentioned, this pipeline create for you the workspaces that you need. So the other option is starting with your dev workspace. So if you have your dev workspace and then you start creating the pipeline, you connect the pipeline to your dev workspace, and as you click deploy, it will create for you your test workspace and then your production workspace. So it depends on how your current setup is in your data and your Power BI server to determine. But the important thing is that all the workspaces, they need to be in premium capacity, and only the first one can be already created. The second and the last step, it will create for you. You cannot connect to a space that you already have. So it needs to be created. And again, all the workspaces need to be in premium capacity. So that's how the pipeline will look like after you complete all the process. So let's say you, as I was mentioning, if you start with developer workspace, you connect to your develop workspace. And as you click to deploy, it will start creating the second test one and the third, the production one. And on the other hand, if you have already had your production and you want to deploy backwards, you can do it with the production, and you create a test and the development for you. But that's just for whenever you are creating. You cannot do that later on in the process. So after you created the deployment pipeline, it's always starting from development, going all the way to production. There is also, whenever you are deploying, one good thing about the pipeline is actually you can choose to deploy everything, or you can select only the items that you want to deploy. So here right now, you can see between the development and the test one, you have this green arrow. It's everything, it's all in sync. But if it's not, I believe it was, it will give you, I can remember right now, I think it was orange sign or red sign, and let you know when you click on this, we will let you see what are the differences between both stages. So then you can see what is the difference and select if you want to apply to the test and all the way to the production. So you need to do one by one. So it's pretty simple. It's easy. It's just Tony mentioned, the first time that you do is like something new, but then after you get used to that, it's pretty straightforward. So your development will be with a developer development workspace, and each step of the pipeline has to be connected with a different workspace, and each workspace can belong to only one pipeline. Whenever you're in test and production, you see here on top that you have this sign. And then when you click it here, that's how you set up all the rules that you want for this specific workspace. So here on the test, you have two options. You have data source rules, and you also have the parameter rules. the data source rules is where you can choose if you're connecting to development or production. But there are some restrictions. I can't remember off the top of my head right now. It's not for all data sources that it work. So in our case, for example, it didn't work, it wasn't supported. So how we can do that is by creating parameter rules. So whenever, that's a really important step in the process. Whenever you're creating your Power BI in your desktop version, instead of hard coding your server, and if you need the database name, you need to create parameters for that. So, and here we allow you to choose and change the parameter. So for example, I select server, and then you can type here just the production workspace shifts from development to production, and we will apply the change for you. And one important thing is that whenever you are setting up the parameter, it needs to be text. It cannot be the data type for the parameter. That's really important. If you don't do that, it won't show up. If you have as any, which is the default, I believe, it won't show up here and it won't let you do the change. You need to refresh the data model before pushing to production. And whenever it's in production, then you refresh again. So I also prepared some best practices rules, and actually I have a diagram that shows actually this best practices rules that I think it's easier to show what I'm talking about, but I also have a slide later that I can show you. So here is the overall diagram. Tony, you hadn't seen this one yet. That's what I mentioned, that it would be easier to understand everything that's going on. Because sometimes those who are not involved in the process, like Tony, he knows a lot. He's part of all the process. But for other users, we put this together to show how is like all these steps in Power BI related and how this pipeline works. So one thing about the first step on the best practices is, as I mentioned, to create this the parameters to be able to change your data source within the pipeline. The second one that's really important is to separate your data model from your dashboard. So you have them in two separate files. So you create your data model in Power BI, and then you push that to your development workspace. And when you are in development workspace, you can test it, play it out in the workspace, but make sure to do all the changes that you may want to make in the desktop version. And then you push the pipeline. The second thing about the best practices is to have your test workspace very similar to your production. So you want your test environment to be similar in data volume, usage volume, and also in similar capacity that you have in production, because you want to make sure that your tester is going to have a real life experience of what the production will look like. Also, you want to have an app for your test environment. That's where your users will go and access to test it out. Regarding your production step, which is the last step in your process, and one important thing is that you want to make sure that only one person is entitled of pushing to production. So now Tony is the guy. He's the only one who has access, and you can set up these rules within the pipeline workspaces permissions. So you have different permissions for each workspace as well as for the pipeline. So only the person who needs to be seeing the pipeline will have access to the pipeline, and only the person who is entitled to push to production will have the admin access to the pipeline, to the production workspace. All the others that doesn't need to push to production, they just need to see what is in there. You can give them just users, user, I believe, or viewer permission to this workspace. So as it change it, and then what you use to connect to your dashboard to build your visuals is actually the connection to the data set. So it's a live connection to your data set. And as you publish the data set, again, you follow the same steps. You actually do it at the same time. So you push all the dashboards also out to all the steps to the development workspace, test workspace, and production. And actually you can do at the same time as well. You can select if you, then you can see it show you dependencies. So you see what dashboard is related to the data set. So as you push throughout the pipeline, the dashboard will also update to change from development to test or production data. The other best practices is, again, if you want to make a small deployment bug fixes, do it in the desktop version. Don't do it on the server. You always want to do in the desktop because you want to have one source of truth. You want to make sure that you don't have many versions being created. You cause like many files, many different versions. You don't want that. So you want to use one version, and you can use source control like DevOps to maintain all your sources where all your developers can have access to that, can download it, and always have the latest version for both your data model or dashboard. And if it's just small changes, the dashboard you of course need to republish. But if it's only a small change that you're doing to your data model, then you don't need to publish everything again. You, as Brent mentioned, we have the read and write capacity, so we can use actually external tools like LM Toolkit to deploy those small changes. So you can deploy changes if you have a new column, a new measure, change relationships, even the server or parameters. You can use that LM Toolkit to do that. So use LM Toolkit to apply the change to development. Always first to develop. Don't do it in the test or production workspace. You need to start with development, and then again, just click on this button that I showed before that will show you automatically what are the differences. You select what you want to deploy to the pipeline. You just click the button deploy. It will deploy to test, and you can again compare test to production whenever all your test is done, and you can push that to production. And that's it. It's pretty simple. So it's pretty straightforward and easy for the end user to maintain it. So here's just like all the best practices I mentioned. Use parameter in the development workspace. You want to add it in the desktop, and you want to separate your model data set from the dashboard. Use XMLA read and write capabilities to apply small changes. In your test environment, we want to simulate your production environment. So you want to have similar data volume, usage volume, a similar capacity as in production. And always test your app before pushing to production. And in production, as I mentioned, you can only one individual be responsible for deploying and manage the permissions differently to the workspace and deploying according to what makes sense for your organization. That's it. But it's pretty straightforward. I know it's a lot of information, but it's simple. Do you have any questions before I move to the lineage piece of that?
Anna, I had a question, and I'll watch the chat here to see if any others come in.
Okay.
But okay, well, two, I guess. So just to confirm, like, it does kind of create a different really creates other workspaces that you're, okay. And so you can take that dev workspace or the test one. Let's say you did the backwards deployment option, and you can make apps out of those. So you can have, this is my well, how can I financial test app, and then test your whole app and see what the app experience is like. Okay, gotcha. You can do a whole app thing. Okay.
Yes, you can create a whole app. Just it will look like exactly. You can do it to look like exactly your production, the app that the end user will access. So they won't be. You can be so similar that they won't notice the difference.
Nice. Okay. Yeah. How do you call out that it is a test version? I guess it's right there in the name, but how does someone who pulls that app up know, oh, this is the test version, not the real one?
I guess what we are doing right now, we are controlling access. So we only share the production version with the end users. And if they are testing something, we let them know this is a test. And usually we let them know what we are testing. So here's the testing link. Go there and test this specific thing. So we let them know what if you wanted them to make sure that all the data is correct. And also if, like, for example, all the dashboard is working as it's supposed to. So we let them know that it's a test as well. And we can call a different name on the test app. You can call it or do some customization.
Oh, yeah.
And get them,
okay.
Yeah, you can customize and do how you want it.
My second question was if for some reason I am trying to be careful with my Power BI premium capacity storage, so I would be a premium per capacity customer. I've got a P1, it's only so big. Is it a concern like that maybe am I creating 3 copies of everything in that workspace? Or two additional copies?
You are, but
Okay.
I can't remember right now, Tony. We actually have this question and we look at that. I believe, can you remember, Tony, what it was whenever we were looking at it? Because we were maintaining the metrics for the premium usage app, but then we shift to Gen 2. And then whenever we have Gen 2, it wasn't possible yet to check the metrics. So that's a good question, and something that whenever Gen 2 makes possible to use the metrics app, we can look again. But I think it was a copy. And that's one thing, like also if you want to restrict the size of your data, test environment, if it's similar to production, you don't need the whole data, you just need a small, but then, your dev, and also your test, you can be a small stat, but it needs to be complete data. So for example, it needs to be the whole picture, cannot be just a part of it, but it can be less day, for example, only 2 years. And then your production, you can have like your how many years you want. So that's one way that you can do to limit and take care of your premium capacity.
Thanks. I don't see any other questions in the chat. Yeah, thanks. That's very helpful. Thanks, Hannah. Yeah, we'd love to see the measure lineage. That'd be great.
Okay, so the last thing I want to show today is one document that I created to show the measures dependencies. So this was a huge data model with more than 180 measures, I believe. And that was created before it actually, this specific case, I can't use calculated group just because of the way the data model is. It's we don't have daily rows, we have records, we only have weekly. So because of that, I cannot use a lot of the custom functions that Power BI offers. So I actually have to create a lot of manual, and that because of that, it was huge and a lot of measures are really hard to maintain. So that's another thing that I could do because of Power BI Premium. I can actually connect writing with this query that I have here on the bottom. I can write this query and create a new empty query within Power BI. And I will create a dashboard that is actually directly connected to my data model that's available in production. So it's a in real time. If something changes in your data model, will automatically change here in this document as well. And I also use parameters here that's highlighted in yellow and the parameter in the model name, because I actually also can also combine different data models. So for example, if I have 3 tabular models, I can combine them and bring everything to just this one dashboard, which is pretty easy to understand what's going on with the measures. And also to go like to show the definitions. So let me click it here. I can actually demo this one. But my reasoning here was two things: to be easier for my clients to maintain, and also to help it with future development if they need to do something else, or validation or fixes. But fixes will be a good way to understand what's going on. So for example, let's say I have this measure which is called selected measure native. If you want to see it, you can just click, and then we'll see all the measures that this one is referencing. So you can see here on my tooltip the code, and as it says, selected value gross build, hours worked. So all the measures that I'm using referencing this one is showing here in the tooltip and also here. And you have two things. You can also click and see the whole this description for this measure, what is the DAX code for this, and what is the model that this measure is coming from. You can also do, oh, I can see the top because it's showing this. It's showing me the panel. Hold on, let's see if we can hide this. Nope, I can't.
Oh, is it is the Zoom share thing covering up the back button? Yeah, that does that. Yeah, this is really, this is really neat, Anna. And I was, as you showed this, so I understand your Power Query. You've got a Power Query query that is called measures definitions or something in your model, and it's actually connecting to the published, basically to the published model. Okay, that's very cool. I was thinking Power Pro users could probably do this too, but not in such a automatic way, but could connect to their Power BI desktop and run a similar query. And then
I believe so, yes.
Okay, kind of have it might be like in Excel or something, but if you really had a model, like I'm done with this, I don't want to, it's a step you'd have to update it every time you change the model, but it could be done.
Definitely, it's pretty helpful. And here they can see the description if you want to see what's the DAX code, what is the description for this measure. And if you click reset, it will reset and show everything. And you can use this to just a regular to filter and search for what you want. The other thing you can do, so let's say now I want to see the selected measure. If I'm doing a code change, or am I using the selected measure? So you can click and see if you're using or not, and see if you make this change, what other measures is going to be impacted with a change that you do in the simple selected measures. So you can see here that I have all those 15 measures that are actually referencing that's selected measure. So if you do a change here, be ready to make sure that all those other measures are working accordingly and as you would expect. The other view that we have is the lineage. So we'll show you the same way, the measure that you have and everything that is connected, just in a visual way. But the nice thing about this one is that you reset the button, you actually see how is all the measures combining. And you can see that I have 3 big ones that is referencing other measures. So this is actually good to understand the complexity of this data model. So you see this one is referencing this one, which is referencing this one. So it's a pretty good tool to developers and whenever you're doing optimization. So at the last time I've been doing a lot of optimizations. So I actually use this to see what I'm using, metrics that I'm not using. If I do change to this one, how that's going to impact my overall model and what I need to watch out for. So that's a pretty neat tool. And also just you can just have an easy measure and description of the measures you have, which you can connect to your dashboard per se, and the end user, if they understand what's the measure definition, they can just access here as well and see what is the measure description.
Wow, that is great. Yeah, it would be great to have this for everything you worked on. That would be so helpful. What was the name of that
Yeah.
visual that you used that did the nodes and arrows kind of graph?
This one, this one was external. Let me see, what was the name? I think it was this one.
Yeah, maybe the one next to it.
Yeah, it was the force directed graph
Force directed
2.12.
graph.
Yeah,
Nice.
unfortunately, they didn't have one. I was trying to do is, for example, if I select the selected measure, filter to just selected measure, it would show all the lineage, the first level and the second, but I couldn't find with the time frame that I had to do this, the one that I want. But yeah, that also shows, like, to those who are not familiar with Power BI, all the what's going on the back end of Power BI.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, so okay, this is really neat. Thanks. So really, I think we would be able to do this just kind of with that query that you showed. That Power Query is the key step.
Yeah. This is
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
So, for those who aren't familiar with what we mean when we say XMLA endpoints, that's a real holdover technical name. It means you can treat your Power BI data sets like a database, essentially, and read and write data from it that way. And so it's a much cooler feature when you hear that than XMLA endpoints. What is that? So that's what I think Anna's saying. With Premium, you could run this query right off your published data set. Without Premium, you can't do that to just a pro level data set, but you could do it to a Premium per user data set now. So yeah, right. Yeah, this is really great. Thank you for sharing this with us.
Of course, thank you.
Yeah, and I don't know if you would, there's no pressure. If in any way you would be able to make a template or something, that was obviously totally cleansed of data, that would be amazing. But also, I understand if you can't do that and share it with us, that's okay. We have we got the idea and we could kind of customize it. But I really like this kind of back and forth view you did because the dependencies are hard to track that way,
Yes.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, and it actually shows much more because the focus of this, what I was working on, was actually the measures, but you can also see the columns, the table, so you can see columns dependencies as well. Table, they can show you like what tables and columns this measure depends on too. So there's much more from here. That was just like I say, like it's a first step. There's a lot of more that you can build on top of this.
Does that calc dependency, it would also return the columns and things like, okay. Interesting.
Yes.
Fantastic.
No, thank you, Brent.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much for sharing that with us. That's great. Any questions for Anna? Checking in my chat here. Okay, there we go. I don't see any right now. I'm sure everyone sees that and goes, well, yeah, that would be so useful. Go ahead. I heard a chime in there.
Hey, Anna. Just out of curiosity, on the pipelines, when you go to first set that up, the very first time, if you haven't done it before, what does the timeline look like for you? Is it a pretty easy process? Does it take a few days of getting it set up and trialing it, or how is that experience for you?
Board. You need to make sure that you have, so there is like two things. You need to make sure that you have, you're the owner of the data sets, and the first workspace needs to be in premium capacity. And also the person that is doing the deployment needs to be able to create workspaces in premium capacity.
Okay.
So there are like the three things. The challenge would be sometimes if your dev doesn't match tests, then you can have a little bit more complexity to that. But if you have pretty clean dev, workspace, test, and production, and even if you don't have tests, like you can connect to a production workspace. That's our case right now. So it's pretty, if it's everything clean, you can do in a few hours.
Nice. Awesome. Well, thanks for the presentation. It's really good.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, so for example, let's say you don't have you don't have the privilege to create workspace, but not to set it to premium capacity. So you need your admin with premium capacity privileges to work with you. So as you run the pipeline, he is the one who needs to do it, because it will automatically create a workspace, and you need to set up to put it in premium capacity
Ah,
to
good
be able
point.
to move forward. Yes.
Good point. Thank you.
Mhm.
Can you do that with just 2 levels, Anna? I mean, do you have to have dev, test, prod, or can you also just have like dev and prod if you're in a simpler environment?
I believe you can. From what I read in the documentation, I think you can. I just haven't tested it out.
Okay. I know I see people doing it just different ways. Like some people have different works. They kind of manually create their own workspaces. You know, here's my dev, here's my test, here's my prod. Then I know other companies who say, no, I don't want to manage that many workspaces. I'll just name the files differently, which to me, that's not so
Yes.
good, because especially then they're taking, well, I wasn't always in favor of that, for taking the dev and test content and putting it in premium when it doesn't necessarily need to be there. You know, mostly you have pro users interacting with things that are under development or kind of in beta. Not always. Sometimes you have people who don't have a pro license that you need to be in there into dev for very early versions. Some maybe, but anyway. But I am kind of curious if someone mentioned to me they thought that the deployment pipelines might do some sort of intelligent deltas and maybe not keep 3 whole copies, but I'm going to look into that and see if it does do that. Then that'd be really great.
I believe it does, because it wouldn't make sense for you to duplicate the whole thing. It's just wasn't able to test it, but yeah. And also the beautiful thing, like, you don't actually need to maintain 3 workspaces. You just need to maintain 1, just your dev, and everything that from dev, the pipeline will maintain for you the test in production. The only thing you need to do right now that is not automatically is deploy the changes to the app. So you need to do that, go there and update the app. That's the only thing that you need to do.
Yeah, gotcha. Okay, that's really great. Let me check the chat one more time. We have a thank you for sharing, so that's cool. Well, Anna, thank you very much. I'll get my slides going here again, and just want to say how much I appreciate you sharing that with us. In particular, even at the last minute, it looked like you had that prepared a long time ago. I don't, or maybe you didn't. That was fast. Did you
I
kind
put
of?
out in like 1 hour and a half.
Well, okay. We especially thank you for doing that then. Yeah, I took a lesson away. You know, I mean, I'm working on confirming speakers way ahead of time. Today my lesson learned was always like send a calendar invite. That's the next thing. So yeah, you'd think okay, emailing out, but now it's going to be like you're going to get a calendar invite, from me, 2 or 3 maybe. Yeah. Right. So yeah, but that was really fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you.
So this title is all wrong, but I really appreciate you sharing that with us. Just to make sure everybody knows about good resources. Did I get muted there? Okay, I'm back. That come as part of our group. We do have a YouTube playlist that you can check out. Call it the Okie Pug YouTube playlist. I haven't been as good lately about sticking videos in these playlists, but I sure will try to do that. We have a recommended videos playlist if you want to subscribe on YouTube. If you're someone who tries to keep up with the latest features, it'll be good guy in a cube videos, or every month when the Power BI team releases the product, they do like a 30-minute video, which says a lot about the amount of change. There's a 30-minute video every month. That's just like, here's this, here's this, here's this. It's like, okay, well, that's a lot to keep up with, isn't it? We do use Meetup as well. Sometimes I post on Twitter. When Lexi was with us, she was like good at social media and was better about that. So, but I'll try to be a little more active on that in the future. And then just that there are these resources always here, especially like Zoe showed us last week, community.powerbi.com. That's always been around, but I think I would want my group to know that the community is really circling and centralizing on that, consolidating at community.powerbi.com. I suspect even in the future that our user group site will be hosted here somehow, because the dynamic communities organization, unfortunately, I get the feeling that they're basically winding down and that Microsoft is going to take over user groups, which is totally great. My guess is what happened is that the dynamic communities organization depended a lot on conferences and events, in-person events. That's my gut feeling anyway. And since last year was so difficult in that regard, that they kind of were like, okay, we need someone else to take this over. So it's great though, because we'll have support right from the Microsoft team as a community. All right. So with that, I never want to wrap up anything too quickly without just kind of asking, hey, you guys all came today. Maybe you had a particular question in mind or a burning issue, anything that the group can help with. So I'll pause for a moment. And if you've got something you want to ask or throw out there, it doesn't matter how simple the question is or how strange, we'll be glad to help. So I'll pause and just let you chat or chime in. Okay, that's probably enough awkward silence. There you go. Thank you guys for being here this today. Really appreciate it. Again, our next meeting, April 15th. Watch me zoom back there. It's going to be April 15th. I'll get the slides and the videos posted. And I look forward to seeing you then. Hope you have a great month and have a great day.